Hey friends, and welcome back to the Rewind podcast of Forward Church. Join us each week as we take a look back on Sunday's message and dig a little deeper into the conversations with those who are teaching across our sites at Forward. We want to invite you to be part of the conversation too. So if something we're talking about on Sunday morning sparks a question in you, head to our website, forwardchurch.ca/ask us, and submit your questions there. And we're going to do our best to engage with those questions in this space. With that said, let's jump in and get started.
So we're back, and everyone made it in safely this morning for what was the first real snowfall of the year. Daryl, tell me about your driving over the last 24 hours.
Do I have to? I was in a meeting with Andrew yesterday afternoon. I left, and then I sat in traffic for a long time. And I came back to the church this morning and sat in traffic for a long time.
Listen to two full podcasts and what should have been like a 20-minute drive.
You just told me about a new podcast, and this morning I had to say, listen to 2 full episodes. I should not have had enough time, but I did. Yeah, winter's here.
Yeah,
it's here.
Welcome back to Ontario as well.
Yeah, and Ontario drivers forget what's happening usually this first couple of snowfalls. So maybe Alberta drivers were better in the snow.
Certainly not.
Okay.
No.
All right.
You're just booting down number 2 there, and and all you see is pickup trucks in the ditch, because these guys, they think they have an awesome truck. I can just floor it. No.
Yeah, there's no weight in the back of those puppies.
No, there's usually not. So, yeah, a lot of cars in the ditch, usually the first week where there's a real snowfall. Okay. Same as here. Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun, or under the snow, I guess. Okay. So, on to more pressing matters.
I didn't even ask about my car ride in.
How was your car ride in, Derek?
It was slow. The problem is there's no way to get to the church here in Cambridge from where I am without going through the Grand River Valley, which means going down and up hills, right?
Right.
And first ice, snowfall, there's not the stuff on the ground, so cars were slip sliding everywhere. I didn't see any accidents. I just saw all of the realities that came out of those accidents.
And we had a couple of staff members borderline traumatized from their drive-in. So hopefully wherever you are listening from, that you were safe and made it out alive there. All right, so we are wrapping up, or we just did wrap up our We the Church series. So we spent a few weeks walking through what it means biblically to be a church, because we've had to reinvent and rethink and how we do what we do as a church, and wanted to go say, now that we're regathering consistently again, what are we doing here? So I'll start with you, Derek.
Yeah.
Reflecting back on, I think it's the past 6-7 weeks, what were the big wins or big highlights for you in terms of like reminding us of who we are?
Yeah, I think starting with our Everyday Disciples series and hearing people get excited about like really growing in those different areas. And I think all of our ministry leaders, I think Pastor Kirk giving oversight to all that, there's been a lot of just alignment and clarity on loving God, loving others, serving the world, and you're just going to continue.
Yeah, I was going to say,
we're working. If you haven't got it yet,
then you were paying absolutely no attention.
Stay tuned. The messaging isn't going to change. So it's been exciting to me to see that doing the spiritual health survey.
Yeah.
And even hearing from people that spiritual health survey was gave some perspective to them and themselves, and already just taking the survey help people realize, there's some areas that I need to, allow God to really begin to do some work in, right? And that's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Like, I'm super excited to hear that, we've got a whole bunch of members that we're going to be introducing. I think our next communion service, there's a list of like 14 members. So people just really taking the call to church membership and engaging. Mm-hmm. We've been starting new groups, whether discipleship groups or men's groups. Almost weekly, I hear about a new group starting. Mm-hmm. We got to baptize 6 young adults, kids. And so that was really exciting to see a bunch of people kind of under the age of, I think everybody was under the age of 22, and seeing all of them saying, hey, I want to take my faith seriously. I want to take the next step in this. So that's all really, really good stuff. And then I know in Kitchener, just seeing new people coming in, seeing the church regather, and that's, I know, been really exciting for Daryl to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely over this season, seeing more people coming back to the church. Of course, I'm new, so like every person's new to me. So I still have those awkward conversations. I'm like, are you new? Oh no, you just haven't been back in 2 years.
Right.
And I just met a couple again this Sunday, and they're like, yeah, we've been here forever, but we just haven't felt comfortable coming back. And I'm like, that's so good to see you. So that was really exciting. And I've really appreciated this series, just reminding ourselves of the fact that, hey, like, we don't own the church belongs to Christ. You know, and it's not that Christianity is something that we just do on our own, but it's something that we need to collectively do together. So that's been, I think, a huge encouragement for everyone who's been a part of it. I know that I've really appreciated that part of the series.
Yeah, specifically that last part you mentioned of the like collective nature of spiritual growth. Like, I think it was the podcast probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, Derek, you reminded us of, I can't even remember what we were talking about, but you're like, yeah, and this is actually a collective reality. I'm like,
We were talking about Acts 2.
yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I just like blew my mind. And I was like, I'm supposed to be a pastor. And I don't get it.
But hopefully through this, we will approach scripture more with that mindset of not me, but us. Like we are doing this together. I mean, that's what this Sunday was all about, is that we are better together. And hopefully we truly believe that. Hopefully that's not just something nice to say, like, we're all in this together, we're all together. Like, we really, truly believe the importance of the church coming together for projects like this, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, so perfect transition. Aside from the Christmas offering projects, you guys both handled some scripture. So Darrell, as we like to call you, Daryl's going to start first and just give us a sense of where you were headed, aside from the Christmas offering piece, where you were headed on Sunday.
Yeah, so the main thing that I wanted to take away was that the gospel leads to action. So that's why I chose to preach out of Hebrews chapter 10. Just reading through that passage, just this beautiful picture of the church in the presence of Christ, and where it all just leads down to is, therefore, let us hold fast to the confession of our faith. And verse 24, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. And that's what we needed to be reminded of, is the fact that we need to be encouraging one another to these good works. And what we focused specifically on this Sunday is the good work of generosity. And generosity, that is a tough thing. That's where I landed in my message of just, hey, like, giving sacrificially, that is challenging. No matter what your position is financially, where you're finding yourself right now, everyone would feel that, but hopefully we'll see there's real benefits when we are generous like that.
I've in a conversation with Kirk, we're going to be teaching on generosity in our student ministry over the next couple of weeks here. And
Nice.
He said, like, I think we need to ask ourselves, what is a biblical definition of generosity, and would God consider you generous? And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't even want to ask that question, because you can't stare in the face of someone who's given so much and then call yourself generous, right? Like,
That's true.
so Derek, you picked a completely different passage, but headed in a similar direction. So I'd love for you to give us sort of like a quick overview of where you were headed, and then why you chose the scripture you chose to head there.
I came back to a passage we were in 2 weeks ago and focused in on a section that I didn't dive into very much. And I kind of alluded to the fact that I was going to come back to this and deal with it in a little bit more detail. And it's the part where it says they sold all their possessions, had everything in common, and gave to everyone as they had need. And
that's how you started your socialist manifesto.
That's right. And then if you go down, you see they enjoyed the favor of all people, and that day by day, people came and became part of the church and came to know Jesus, right? They were being saved. And I just thought this beautiful reality of investing your resources in partnership, as we talked about around this table, for the gospel it draws a picture of like this is who the church is meant to be.
Yeah.
Every time I read that, and whenever I talk to people, there's something that resonates, I think, deeply in the heart of Christians to say, man, that's awesome. Wouldn't it be great to be a part of the church when it was like that? Mm-hmm. And we want to be a church that's like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those are not just things that happen then, but this is part of who the church is called to be, that we come together in ministry, and in so doing, God accomplishes things that couldn't happen just through us as individuals. And whenever I look at the Christmas offering projects, I think this is, first of all, that number is always staggering to me.
Yeah.
But then just the impact that those things will have, each of those projects, and the potential that they have. I'm always like, man, we get to be a part of doing this together, this thing that none of us could just do on our own.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so before we dig into the actual projects themselves, Daryl, you started with an awesome question that I just felt like we had to ask around this table. You started with the question, essentially, and I'm probably borderline butchering this, but what's one thing that you couldn't do without help, that you need people around you to do? Mm-hmm. And I'd love for both of you guys to answer that question. So, Daryl, you sort of gave us a little bit of a hint, but I need a specific. Like, here's the thing, that if you said, Daryl, you need to go and do this, like, we're sending you off to do this by yourself, no YouTube, no phone a friend, you have to figure this out, what would you not be able to do?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I did talk about it, and I could genuinely, like, car repairs, that is just one area where if I could not phone a friend, if I couldn't YouTube it, I would just, it's never happened to me, but I've heard a comedian talk about this once, that like, your car breaks down, you're on the side of the road, and as a guy, you feel compelled. You got to get out of the car, you got to open that hood, and you got to just stare at that engine, and you just stare at it, and you're like, yep. That's an engine. Like that's as far as I get. Yeah. I could call someone like, check the oil level. I'm like, nope, I'm out. I'm out of here. That is just one major knowledge gap in my life.
So do you have a CAA membership?
I certainly do.
I was going to say, that feels like a prerequisite.
There's a lot of other areas where I feel like I could figure it out, but when it comes to cars, no, I'm pretty hopeless. So on a side note, with our son Parker, we've been really pushing cars with him. He loves cars, so I'm kind of hoping that he likes cars. Maybe he can
bail you out.
He can bail me out when he's 18. So just playing the long game.
Okay,
long game right there. Yeah.
Derek, you're one of those people who just knows a little bit about absolutely everything. So I'm interested to hear your answer to this question.
I could not do anything on my car.
Okay.
And I also could almost build almost nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have zero handyman skills. I'm very thankful for you. I've learned how to do some things with YouTube. If you give me a YouTube video, I can figure almost anything out. But if you just took YouTube off the table and like most tasks that you give me to do something, build something, that's totally out of my wheelhouse. I didn't learn how to do any of that as a kid. My dad was an accountant. I could do your taxes for you. But
okay, all right.
But I didn't learn any of that from him. I've learned a number of things from my father-in-law, who built all their houses from scratch.
Really? That's
yeah, just nice. That's what he did after work.
Wow.
So, but I don't have any of those skills naturally. And the car thing again, yeah,
you also have a
I've changed my tire flat on the side of the road, but only because I had YouTube.
Just got to break that out. Andrew, I need to hear yours though.
Okay. So this will surprise absolutely no one.
All right.
I cannot figure out Excel, Microsoft Excel. I have had grown men who are accountant and engineers and sit me down and I'm like, no, all the formulas and stuff. I just end up wanting to throw my computer. And Keith is shaking his head at such disapproval right now. But if you wanted to torture me, give me a job to do with Excel spreadsheets and then leave me in a room by myself and I would breakdown.
I love it.
That's amazing.
It would be a YouTube channel. It's just watching Andrew absolutely lose it
Nice.
with the computer in front of him. Yeah, and I love this idea that like we're all gifted differently. Keith can shake his head not disparagingly at me because he is gifted with like tech and numbers and those sorts of things. And I need people. Like we've often said, you know, like the Anne Marie's and Clazinas who run the administrative side of our church are absolute treasures to us as a church
I had
body.
a thing this morning that I looked at and thought, this would take me like 2 hours to do. I walked down and asked Anne Marie if she'd give me a hand with it. And like 10 minutes later, she said she figured it all out. It was done.
Yeah.
And with that, like, it's amazing when you find someone who has like their strength and to know like what your strength is.
Yeah.
To try to kind of live in that space as much as you can. Because I mean, recognizing that God wires us all differently, and that's amazing. That's good. So you should never shame someone if they don't have the same skills that you have, but be thankful that they have other skills, and that's part of coming together.
Yeah, and I love that we are genuinely, like, this isn't just some like, you know, kitschy phrase we throw on a sermon title. It's a genuine like biblical truth, and we've talked about that, you know, the unity and the idea of being a family and a body and those sorts of things that it's really helped me. And so I'd like to ask us, how do we continue to lean into this idea of like church being a body and a family in a world that's pretty individualistic, right? Like we have YouTube because we hate asking for help.
Sure.
And then like I don't have to go call a friend because I can just search a YouTube video. I can you know, consult the anonymity of YouTube and figure it out. But if we're called to be this kind of like better together community, how do we lean into that and lean away from those cultural forces that want us to be individualistic? Through to you.
I think you got to, first of all, be honest with yourself. Like there's a little bit of humility whenever we have to rely on people, right? To say, that's not what I'm good at. And I think a lot of people are probably okay with that. Like, and some of us really struggle with that, but some of us are okay with that. But you then also have to actually know other people well enough and be in relationship with other people enough that you can reach out to them and know who you can reach out to.
Yeah.
I think this is going to get into a little bit about the series we got coming up in the new year.
It's already clicking for me. Yeah.
So, you know, like, I think that's a huge problem I think, sure, some of us struggle with the pride, but some of us struggle with we honestly just don't have the community and relationships around us that we can lean into each other. We haven't invested the time to get there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Daryl, is there anything you would say differently or in addition to that? How do we lean into this idea and away from that individualistic mindset?
Well, just to kind of build off of what Derek just said of, you know, having that community, sometimes we don't know that person that we need to reach out to, that you're struggling with something, whether it's, something really big or like a small thing, like getting a car repair, like that. In the grand scheme of life, that's usually a fairly small thing, but you might have a bigger issue, like you're struggling in your marriage or raising your kids. And it's one thing when you say like, oh, I don't know who I can ask. But I think on the other side of the coin, there are people who have just a wealth of knowledge. And my encouragement to anyone has that experience, who is a maturing Christian, is to find people who might need your help.
Yep.
Like some people have been married and have fantastic marriages for the past like 30 or 50 years. And the big question I have is like there are people, like so many times I talk to young people, like they're married, they're in their mid-20s. I wish I had someone in their 50s or 60s who could just tell me how to have a good marriage. And I walked up to someone and they said, no, I can't. And I'm like, they're afraid to take you under their wing. And I just, you know, especially at Kitchener, like we're a fairly young church, and every time we have people who are older in the church who are doing that, I'm just, it's so awesome when they take younger people underneath their wing to do that, to build up that community. So I think that has to be the other side of the coin. If people are searching for it, and if you got it, like you got to share that knowledge. You might feel insecure, but trust me, like you probably know more than you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really great. And it breaks my heart that you hear stories of that, because like there is something. I predominantly work with the younger end of the age demographics. And
Ooh, didn't know that.
you can tell because I'm wearing a ball cap and don't look like a real pastor. But like, I find that like when somebody, especially like under the age of 25, gets to the spot where they're willing to ask for help, to have that shut down would just be so devastating. That there is like a lot of the like false bravado of our young people, man, like that's hard to undo. And they've lived a lot of this narrative of being on your own and leaning into your own strength and being your own person and all that sort of stuff. So if somebody's broken and struggling enough to say like, I need help, and to just have their hands swatted away, man, like that is heartbreaking to me.
Like one of the things that you can teach people in those circumstances is that it's good for them to know that you don't have it all together.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
It's good for them to know that you still struggle.
Absolutely.
But Daryl's so right. You probably have learned a bunch of things along the way. I hope you've learned a bunch of things along the way that they just haven't had the opportunity to learn yet. And you can help hopefully save them maybe some of the pains that you've gone through. One of my favorite verses in scripture says that God is the God of all comfort, and he comforts us so that we can then take those learnings, that comfort that we've received, and be a comfort to others.
Yeah.
And I think that's true in a whole bunch of different ways. The things that he teaches us and that we learn, it's not just about us. It's something that we've been given so that we can give to somebody else.
And ties so closely into like these last couple of series that we've been talking about, right? Like that's part of being the church, and that's part of making disciples, right? Is not just the like being a part of an organization that does things in the name of Jesus, but being people, individuals. And like, I don't want to push us away from the analogy on the table of like being a united body, but like that we do have some personal responsibility to say like, I'm going to go and I'm going to invest in other people and I'm going to make disciples. And I haven't lived a perfect and flawless life as I follow Jesus, but I'm still called.
Yeah.
The call to make disciples doesn't end because you sinned, right? Like,
No, I mean, if Paul's going to say, follow me as I follow Christ, I mean, like I'm going to have to say that for sure, right? There's going to be a lot of, I had a great meme the other day.
Okay, give me the meme. I love the memes.
It's hard. I wish I could show you the picture, right? But it showed a picture of like actual Spider-Man, and then it showed a picture of Spider-Man, like, but in a crappy like a guy dressed up as Spider-Man in a crappy Halloween costume that was ill-fitting.
Yeah.
And then it showed a picture of a guy who had like turned a bag inside out on his head. And the original Spider-Man said Jesus. The Spider-Man in the ill-fitting costume said Paul. And the guy with the bag on his head said me. And then it said, follow me as I follow Christ.
Love it.
Nice.
I feel like the internet's just a treasure trove for us.
Yeah.
Also a bit of abyss. So to get us back on track here, I think that's some really helpful lessons for us as we navigate what it means to be as individuals and as a community that come together and say, we're actually better together. And we need to be able to ask for help. We need to be able to offer help even when we feel like we're just broken people stumbling towards Jesus. And then we said, like, a lot of what we were doing this Sunday was saying, like, one of the ways that we can be better together is we can do, like, greater, more generous things in the name of Jesus. And we had this impressive list of projects, and we took up a significant portion of what is normally the teaching time on a Sunday morning to talk about them. So, lead Pastor Derek, if people had questions as to why we would do that, why you would take 25 or 30 minutes on a Sunday morning out of a teaching time and highlight that, well, what would your answer be?
Yes, I'm going to give you two reasons. So the first is a strictly pragmatic reason. It takes a good 25 minutes just to unpack those projects and nothing else. There's 13 projects there. If you only took 2 minutes per project, Andrew, you can do that even without an Excel sheet. I know you can do it.
But I do have a calculator on my phone.
26 minutes right there, right? So just pragmatically in the service, if we're going to have time to highlight something of this magnitude that we're going to do together as a church, you have to be able to create the time. But functionally, if we think about the totality of where we've been this fall, this for me in a lot of ways felt like a call to action and a capstone of bringing together what has now been like 11 or 12 weeks of teaching And so it was just an overflow and an outflow of what we've been talking about with everyday disciples and then we the church. And now this is a call to action to be that type of church that's serving the world together on mission. And I think it's a great segue into now our Christmas as well. So I felt like it was just that a week to bring all of that together and a much more practical week. This is what we're going to do together as a church.
Yeah, and actually, I really love how the picture of this whole thing fits. I wish you guys would have like co-preached the message or something, or people could have got both scriptures, but it is such a perfect like putting together of the pooling of resources that you see in Acts 2 and that call to like stir one another up to love and good works. Like that's really, that's the vision we want to set here, is that like we can come together and like maybe there's a small handful of people who could give what is like 265,000.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there's probably some people who are listening who could maybe do that on their own. Even that would be really, how many times can you do that? Right.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of us, we don't have the capacity. God has not given us the capacity to give in that fashion, but to come together and do things is like, I get to be a part of that.
And the things that we're highlighting in there. And if you haven't checked out that, you didn't show up on Sunday, go to the website and there should be a link there. And these incredible opportunities to serve. And one of the like real joys from my life is that we get to interact with these organizations on a different level. Like I know you're doing some stuff for Greg and Kristen in Impact Kids, and like my family and I've been out there a couple of times working with them.
We had a picture up there on Sunday, I think.
You didn't end up putting
it didn't go up there? It didn't get up there?
No. You had a very like a nice smiley kid, not me making a goofy face, but in the Impact Kid t-shirt.
Kid shirt, yes.
I had the right shirt on. I was being a doofus, but and like Greg and Katie as well in Nicaragua, like friends of ours who have, felt the call of God to go down to Nicaragua and do that. And Cedar Home, we had
just Kareem. A couple of weeks ago, we had Kareem here. We've got Elizabeth Lauer, who is working with Roxanne Sanat at the center in Cambodia. We have the project to the Kalmakia people with Send International and the Brew Bakers. And and then close to home too, right?
Yeah.
We've got Safe Families.
Yeah, we got Ray of Hope. Like there's just so many incredible opportunities. And so, Daryl, before the podcast, you were asking like, we're gonna have to pick our favorite kids, and so I'm gonna ask you to do that. As like you got to lean into and learn about and share about these projects. Is there one or two that has particularly drawn close to your heart?
Yeah, and as you said, it's like choosing your kids. Like it's thanks for the impossible task. What's your favorite? Hey, like all these projects are incredible, and it's a list that we had to pare down from other potential projects, which is part of the reality. Whenever you choose something, you have to say no to something else. But we couldn't put 50 projects on there. We had to kind of choose, hey, what are the ones where we really feel like we can make a big impact? What are things that we think will resonate with the church? So really, like literally all of them do resonate with me, which is
You're avoiding the
awesome.
question. You're the mom who got asked who your favorite is. That's what you're doing right now.
And that concludes my point. Sure, I can talk about ones that really hit me. So talk about Cedar Home in Lebanon, just looking into like what they're doing and the need that's in Lebanon.
Yeah.
To be honest, like I saw on the page, like it said there's a crisis in Lebanon. And I'm just like, I need to know more about this. And so started just like looking up, reading articles, making sure I understand like what this organization is doing. And again, like it just heartbreaking when you see a country, when you see a region that has been hit really hard just with economic crisis, when you see people who, they can't send their young girls to school, when they can't provide the most basic needs, and that level of food insecurity and at all levels, reading that just realized like, wow, by us providing these funds, like we can make a real impact in these girls' lives. And so that one definitely tugged at my heart as I was reading through that. So The other one, I mean, so that's like far away, and we are promoting and supporting a lot of projects that are more local, nearby, and just the vision. We're raising funds to be able to support or plant churches in the region or in Ontario. That's the other one that just really tugged at my heart of like, we're trying to position ourselves to a point where if there is an opportunity that we would be able to make that happen. And I think on a stewardship, on a wisdom level, that makes so much sense that, hey, we know that God is going to put things in front of us. He's going to lead us in a direction, especially if we take that first step to say, hey, we're going to set aside funds to be able to follow through with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom there, and I'm just excited of what is that actually going to turn into. And we don't know yet, but we're just expecting God's going to open a door, which is awesome.
Yeah. And we were talking like before we actually hit record here about like, what does it look like to partner with other churches locally and nationally and provincially? What does that look like to be partners? And I think fits super tightly with what we're talking about here, that we are better together. And that's not just a like Forward Church, Kitchener, Cambridge situation. That's us. It's the body of Christ.
I mean, we're not just interested in building like just one location, one church. Like we want to reach people who have no access to the gospel. And that could be even areas in our own city where there isn't a gospel presence in that community. Which can sound surprising when you think of Canada, but the reality is, that is the reality.
Yeah, we're increasingly unchurched as a country.
Yeah.
So you got to handle this most directly, right, Derek? Like this was sort of your baby. You were the one handling all the whittling down of opportunities
with our leadership team's help. But I run point on this. Yep.
So now you have to pick your favorite.
Well, you have to pick a favorite first, and then I'll answer mine, Andrew. So what was your favorite project? Which one kind of grabbed you?
So I've got a couple. One, I just have to shout out Greg, a.k.a. Coach Isaac, and Katie. I'm just really excited to see like the incredible fruit.
We call this pandering because he knows Greg listens.
Yeah, it's true. He's also a friend of the show. But yeah, just to see like the really early fruit of a ministry. And I know Greg well enough to know that his heart was like, when there's just build up intention, like he wanted to go so bad and felt God's call, and to see all that, like what was probably felt like frustration to him be expressed and like God just really blowing the doors open on a couple of things. It's just really cool to watch. Also another Greg and Kristen, like I said, my family and I have gone to Montreal and worked with them a couple of times. They're dear friends. We got kids in and around the same age, and just again see like people who labor hard in difficult places for the sake of Jesus, and their team is expanding. And we were texting yesterday. He was just saying like how exciting it is to see what God has been doing even over the last little bit. So those are a couple. And Safe Families is one like that's really close to our family's heart as well. So I picked 3 because
I'm going to do 2. I'll do a local one and a global one.
Okay.
I am very excited that we're going to be partnering with SIM and the Evangelical Church of Liberia to do to see them do some medical outreach clinics in northern Liberia. I'm just passionate about seeing people who have never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus, but then you combine that with people who have never had the opportunity to have a doctor.
And didn't you say it was like 0.8%? Like any evangelical expression there?
Yeah, less than 1%, and it's because the church is coming in and bringing healing that they're being given permission to bring to bring news about the one who is the ultimate healer, right? And I just love that. I love that combination.
That's what you're talking about in Acts 2, right? Like that expression that leads to the favor that leads to people coming.
And I love partnership. Again, if we're talking about where we've been, the church, that we're partnering with brothers and sisters in churches who are on the other side of the globe. Yeah. But we're all part of the same church and the same family. I love partnering and empowering with the local church and the national church in places. So that really resonates with me. And then locally, the internship program, I shared with you guys the stat, and I shared it on Sunday about the current age of lead pastors, senior
caught me
pastors
off guard.
in North America. And I just think, like, I love this church. I love how this church has built into me to develop me as a leader. And I know, Andrew, you feel the same way. And so for us to be able to be a blessing to the church broadly by saying, hey, what Forward is a great church. And there's a lot of things that we can bring to the table to help build into and develop next generation leaders that will go out and be a blessing to other churches.
Yeah.
And to see some of those things transferred into the church here in Ontario, across Canada, or wherever God takes those men and women in the future, right? Like, I just love that.
And we've had interns in the past.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. Daryl was an intern here.
Yeah, I shared that on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, I got an internship and like legitimately don't think I would be here without that opportunity. Learned so much through that. Incredible. It was so good. So to see other people get that chance, and let me tell you, like it's a 2-year internship. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Fantastic to be able to give 2 years to build into someone and what they're going to do, whether it's at Forward or somewhere else around the world. Really exciting about that.
Or we can play boomerang and we can send them out and then they just come right back like you.
There you go. It's probably the best plan.
So those are my. I love. There honestly, there's not a single project that I'm not excited about on the list. But if I was going to highlight 2 things and just kind of explain why they resonate with me, those are the 2 I picked.
It's like picking your favorite kid. So now another difficult question: favorite staff member? I'm just kidding. You wound up like you were expecting to actually have to
I was
answer.
going to answer that one.
Don't. It's just better if I don't hear you say Daryl in front of me.
Oh, what's that? Oh, my phone just went off. Oh, okay.
Maybe it's the guy who's running the board here today. Huh?
That's who you need to grease the palm of in the ego. The guy who controls everything. All right. So we've clearly gone deeply off the rails in this moment. But so we've wrapped up this We the Church series, and we've sort of pointed out a number of times the trajectory that we've been on. Now we're going to head into something that's pretty traditional. We're going to head into Advent. So give us a little bit of a sneak peek, because we're going to do the traditional Advent themes, but do them a little differently.
Yeah, we're going to look at the themes of Advent: love, joy, hope, peace, and Christ on Christmas Eve. And we're going to look at how we have to choose Christmas. We have to choose those things in our life. I think we've been through this period of time where a lot of those things, for many of us, probably feel like they've been determined by the circumstances of the moment and where we found ourselves. And even as we thought about Christmas, and we were talking with our dream team about Christmas, what we can do for Christmas this year. A lot of times you come to Christmas and you have a fairly strong sense of like, you kind of oscillate between 2 realities when you're planning a Christmas Eve service in the church. There's the celebratory nature of Christmas, and so you can go big and you can celebrate. And then there's the desire that a lot of people have for that more intimate experience.
The coziness.
The coziness, the tradition of Christmas. And you often feel like a tension to lean one way or the other. And honestly, I think I speak for Keith and for the whole team, like, we just didn't know this year. We've just lived with so much uncertainty. Last year we knew, light some candles. We're probably, a lot of us, going to be celebrating in our homes, and it's going to feel kind of small and intimate and isolated. And we want to let people know that Christ is there with them in the midst of this.
Yeah.
This year was like, well, what are we going to be? Where are we going to be? Where are people, in between, right? Where are people at? And just felt like it was a call to choose these realities, to live into these realities. And Advent is not. So we struggle with this, I know, in evangelical circles. We think Advent is our Christmas series. Well, okay. It's a lead up, it's a preparation to Christmas, but it's actually about living in that moment of waiting.
Yeah.
Right? It's about identifying with the waiting for the Messiah who was to come. And now we wait for the Messiah who is coming again.
Yeah.
And we lean into the love, the joy, the peace, the hope that comes from that promised second coming and holding on to the promises of Christ coming again. So we look at that story, and then we also translate it into the moment of waiting that we find ourselves in the already not yet of God's kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so we're just going to unpack some of those. And this week, it's going to be Kirk and Daryl.
Nope.
Kirk and Andrew.
You can take it.
You're going to be there.
No, it's all yours.
And you guys are going to be diving into a story that like is just a few verses and probably not ever in your nativity scene.
I know. I've loved unpacking that, like, because I only have to preach like once every like couple of months.
Yeah.
I get to roll into this one, and I've been really excited about it.
And it's just a great story of someone who was just lived that choosing of hope, right?
For a long
choosing
time.
to hold on to the promises of God, even when it didn't seem to be coming to fruition.
Yeah. And I'm excited about that. So we're going to wrap up here in just a minute, but I'm actually going to throw it right back to Derek, and you're going to give us a sneak peek to take us out here, because you, in the midst of trying to do 483 things on Sunday morning, could only just highlight. We typically do a big, crazy Christmas dinner where we support a bunch of organizations and have hundreds of people in here, and there's hundreds of you guys serving, and we can't do that this year, sadly, and we're genuinely bummed about that.
Yeah, we were looking forward to doing it in Cambridge and Kitchener for the first time, doing it in both locations. And
But we got something else.
we got something else.
Can you give us? I know it's going to be more fully explained on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
But give us a little bit here.
We're going to take Christmas to hundreds of people instead.
I like it.
And so we're calling it Share Joy, and we're going to pack up some joy and bring it to people the week before Christmas. Pack up some presents and an activity that families can do together. We've worked with a couple of our partner organizations in the region to come up with a list of families who will really be blessed by this. And we're going to give you the opportunity as individuals, life groups, families to adopt a family and to share some joy with them this Christmas. And I'll unpack all of that and what that looks like. And Daryl will share a little bit in Kitchener as well.
Yep.
Man, I'm excited about it. I think it's just an incredible way for us to really lean into and live into what we've been talking about.
And those funds come from our Christmas offering. So this has already been made possible by the generous giving of God's people in the past, and we want to raise new funds so we can continue to do things like this in the future.
Yeah, and it's us coming together with local organizations, us as a church family. Again, something we couldn't do on our own, but we share our resources and stir up one another to love and good work. So we're excited about leaning into all of this and heading towards Christmas with all of you guys. And we'll see you back here next week.